I never said specifically that I think that race-based affirmative action is the best way to rectify the systems of injustice that.
Why don't you practice it by stepping out? And why don't you go to the registrar tomorrow and tell him you want to withdraw from Amherst?
Are you listening to what he just said to you? Get off.
After World War II, the white middle class soared to prosperity as a result of bills like the GI Bill. And African Americans who were coming home from war didn't get those benefits simply because they were African American. The U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs denied African Americans access to those benefits simply because of their race. And you are correct in saying that no one today dealt with that particular issue. With that being said, however, there was wealth amassed as a result of those programs that still exists today. And when I think of your example about an individual who works as a janitor and sees people dining in a beautiful cafe walking home from work, I want to ask you, do you think any of that indignation, given certain circumstances, might actually be justified simply because there have been systematic blocks in people's way throughout American history, not ending with slavery, not ending with the Jim Crow laws, not ending, some would say even today, we still have housing discrimination, all of which is to say, you found that during the Cold War era, there was a massive boom in the white middle class's prosperity, and you just didn't have that among African Americans, not because they weren't meritorious, but because they were discriminated against.
So, let me ask, we're in a very smart college. It's worth pursuing a discussion on these points. So there are Americans whose present benefits are due to past advantage. By the way, this past advantage, which is often assumed to continue with the white man, actually goes all the way back to the beginning. The American Indians who were here first, right, had a huge advantage. We presume that they owned the whole country. Now, by the way, let's pause for a moment. How do you get to own a country? If you have Cain and Abel is a shepherd and Cain is a farmer, and Cain says, okay, I'm not going to put a fence around the whole world. I own it, because I'm the only guy here. You're a shepherd. And my descendants will now inherit the earth, and anybody who shows up is a usurper. Rousseau says that the first guy who puts up a fence and claims he owns something is a con man. So the American Indians came. They happened to be first. They came in a bunch of tribes. The Navajos who got the land took it from the Hopi or the Pueblo. Their law of the jungle was conquest. That's how they got the land. There's a big fight about the Black Hills that I cover in the film. The Sioux who got the Black Hills took it from the Cheyenne. So when we say, oh, give us the land back, are you going to turn around and give it back to the Cheyenne? Oh, no. It's ours. Really? How come you own it forever now? So what I'm getting at here is history is very complicated. Let me give you an example of India so we can look at this at the level of theory.
Bro, here's my thing, bro. When you say there are racial advantages in the United States, but that argument, in my opinion, is like, it's kind of like a fallacy to me, because you're going to be like, yeah, because of the GI Bill, like, we didn't have the same advantages. And I do understand his example of that, but you got to think. You're using white people and black people. There's other races in the United States. For example, Indian Americans. They weren't even, like, this is all I'm saying, bro. It's other races here right now who are prospering, I guess, in the terms who are financially prosperous. The number one paid race in America is what? Indian Americans. And then it's Asian Americans second. So it's like, when you have these type of arguments, I know Indians can be considered Asian. I'm not going to get into the logistics of it. But when you have these type of arguments and say, like, that's why we're not prospering, it doesn't help the African-American community, in my opinion. It doesn't help us, because it just puts the blame on someone else when our biggest issues, we can literally solve them. If we were stop looking outward and look inward to solve our issues, we can. So, and I'm only saying this to say, when you have these type of arguments, I look at what you're trying to say. Like, what message are you trying to get across? It's not our fault that we're in issues, which is probably true. but it's our responsibility. And things that we can't control, like our reading levels, things we can't control, like our weapon violence, things we can't control is like our children out of wedlock, things we can't control, like the abuse of the welfare system. Things we can't control, we aren't looking at those things. We're looking at things that we have no power over, for real. So I don't really agree with the premise of that statement, but who knows? I'm a 20-year-old college student, 21-year-old college, whatever, so what do I know?
Okay, India was invaded by the British, and earlier by the Afghans, and the Persians, and the Mongols. So you have all these successive invasions, right? Are you actually saying that you believe in a rule of social justice today that says globally, let's look at this as a global rule of justice, I'm going to figure out whose ancestors did what to whom, and I'm going to return goods that were illicitly taken from the beginning to the people who had it originally? Do you believe that that's a viable way to organize our society? Do you believe, if I can ask you a direct question, that you are the beneficiary of white privilege here at Amherst?
I
yes
do,
or no?
Well, yeah, and
Pause.
Okay.
If you are, can I ask you a further question?
Okay, yeah, but I don't just say it in a I don't say it in a self-flagellating and self-aggrandizing way.
Hold on. Okay, go on.
You know what? I really try not to. I'm simply saying that because you asked me. Really, I view the recognition of one's privilege as an impetus to change things. So I don't just say I have white privilege. I try to help those who have not benefited from such privilege.
How? Hold on. Let's pursue this for a moment.
Sure.
You say, this is actually very important because there's a psychology here.
This whole stance to me is just weird. Like, it's just weird to me, bro. It's so weird. Because let's talk about it. If you sitting here is like, yeah, you have the privilege, this is why, because I'm going to talk about the premise of what he said. He said, is white privilege the reason, basically, that you're in this university? Like, is this a real big reason why you're here? He said yes. So, what does that mean? That means that the work that you put in to get here, I mean, it matters, but your privilege matters more. Like, it didn't matter how hard you work, you was going to get here regardless. But what's the other side to that? You look at someone like me, and like, well, I mean, you're just a natural born victim. Because if you are a natural born, I guess, leader in society or naturally privileged in every aspect, that means I'm naturally a victim in every aspect. That's what you're saying. And y'all watch my channel, I don't think I'm a victim. I'm never going to say it. And if you want me to say it, that's kind of weird. And this mindset to me is also just as weird. Like, you're probably extremely intelligent, you probably work extremely hard, but you're not going to put your success on that. You're going to put your success on your white privilege. You know, hey, to each his own though, like, to each his own. Me personally, I'm not a victim, and I'm not going to say I'm a victim. I think I worked for everything I got, and if you don't also think you worked for everything you got, I'm not going to sit here and say you did, because who knows?
Sure.
Right?
Well, you see, I'm going to answer your question, but I'm really not trying to attack you. I'm not trying to be provocative. I just find that often, I think the essence of much of this discourse surrounds hypocrisy, and you're trying to demonstrate that I'm a hypocrite. I say I benefit from white privilege, yet I don't actually do anything. But I'm gonna backpedal and say that ultimately I think what the greatest vice is cruelty, and I don't want to be hypocritical. So to answer your question, I'll start in high school. Do people want to hear this, or do we?
Educated. Let them know.
Come on, I want to know.
Look, let me say where I'm going with this, because I think you're...
I don't even know what he's saying.
Too bad.
All of which is to say, it's not like I picked anyone out to help based on the color of their skin, but I was a tutor for people who tended to be low income when I was in high school. I suppose that would be one direct answer to your question, because oftentimes disparate educational opportunities are grounded in disparate economic systems, or systems that produce disparate economic outcomes. So that's one way that I would combat it on an individual level.
All right. Here's what I'm getting with this, okay?
Okay, whatever.
One of the benefits of a good education of reading people like Nietzsche is you begin to understand how deep the human desire is for moral self-exculpation. Moral self-exculpation. Now, you say, and I didn't say this, you said this, I'm a beneficiary of illicit white privilege. Okay?
Illicit?
Well, isn't all white privilege illicit? Is it deserved?
Well, in this current system, there is legality.
Illicit means immoral.
Okay, then
immoral white privilege.
Yeah.
Okay. So then if I were to say to you, there are surely many deserving minorities who would like to come to Amherst but have the inherited disadvantage of American history. Therefore, since you are an acknowledged beneficiary of illicit privilege, would you be willing to step aside voluntarily, putting your own moral mouth where your self-proclaimed virtue is, and give your seat, not my seat. I realize you may be super generous with other people's advantages and favor affirmative action, so other white kids who apply to Amherst are turned away to open spaces for minorities. But I'm not talking about you acting out your virtue on them. I'm talking about you acting out your virtue on you. Mm-hmm. Are you willing to give up your illicit seat that you don't deserve here at Amherst to make room for a disadvantaged minority? Yes or no?
Okay, well, let me start here. I don't know how you got on the topic of affirmative action.
By following the logic of your...
No.
And here's my thing. He's not going to answer that question because like I said earlier, when you have the basis that you don't deserve where you are, that's a solid question, because are you willing to give up your seat? If somebody came to you today who was African American and said, I deserve your seat, you don't deserve it, give it to me right now, are you going to give it up? You're not going to give it up, because deep down to your core, you know you worked for that seat. You know you earned that seat. Deep down, you know you did. I can hear you talk. You sound pretty intelligent. You're using words I've never even heard before, and I'm literally a college student right now. But deep down, you know you earned that seat. So you know you're not going to give it up. And this is the problem I have with it. This is the problem I have with all this virtual signaling, all this fake care. Because deep down, you don't care. You're not going to give up your seat, and you're not going to tell none of your friends to give up their seats. Because you know you earned it. So instead of answering the question, you're going to flip to affirmative action. You're not going to answer that question. I'm calling it now.
I never said specifically that I think that race-based affirmative action is the best way to rectify the systems of injustice.
Why don't you practice it by stepping out? And why don't you go to the registrar tomorrow and tell him you want to withdraw from Amherst?
Are you listening to what he just said to you? Get on, man.
Yeah.
Tell
I'm
me
listening.
Think about it.
Go ahead.
Okay, well, I mean, look, I'm only continuing to engage because you continue to engage with me, and I do want to hear other people's questions. But in response to that, again, what you're trying to demonstrate is that everyone's hypocritical. As someone once said, that we're all dirty up to our arms, right? We're not all perfect. None of us is perfectly morally.
Because you are hypocritical. You in one breath said that you have this privilege, that you're given things unjustified. It's unjustified. You think that you don't deserve these things. You think that other people deserve them more than you, of another race. These are what you're saying. But then on the same breath, when he asks you, okay, give it up. Give up your seat at college. Give it up. You can easily do that. Like, I don't think they would fight for you to stay there. Just be like, I'm leaving. I want someone else who's underprivileged. You can find someone who's underprivileged. Be like, yeah, accept them. They deserve my seat. But you're not going to do it. Because deep down, you know you deserved it. You know you worked for it. And I don't understand why there's a problem with saying you deserve something. I don't understand, because if you don't say you deserve something, if someone else is black, you think they're just naturally victims. And I don't agree with that. I don't think I'm a natural victim. But you also don't think you worked for what you had. But it's just kind of weird to me, bro. You're not going to give it up, but you know you don't deserve it? Like, what do you mean? It's a contradiction.
Consistent. Now, I've said absolutely nothing about affirmative action. The fact is that I believe everyone in this room is hypocritical to some degree, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't strive for a more just and equitable system entirely. There have been points in my life in which I have given up some of the privileges with which I have been endowed, simply because I realized that it wasn't the right thing to do. At the same time, I think everyone needs to survive, and that we understand that we exist exist in an imperfect system, and that we have to conduct our business in such a way as to not only adhere to our moral standards, but to the standards imposed upon us by the system in which we live. And I think that we have to be generous to people in their efforts to not be hypocritical and then do their best. But I don't think that we should totally throw away the idea that we shouldn't have those standards at all. So that's my response to you, but I would still like a response to my question regarding the inequity that I talked about with the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. That is wealth that is passed down, and it's documentable wealth. The same way that the wealth created, or the wealth stolen as a product of slavery, was also documentable wealth. We have numbers that demonstrate precisely how much wealth was stolen, and that's money that in some way could be given back. Now, if we're saying that it's absolutely impossible to give that money back because it's too hard to trace, we'd have to give money to the African tribes, we'd have to give money to people who are no longer exist. That's absolutely fine, but we have to understand that we haven't really come to terms with that injustice that's been perpetrated. And if we are admitting that no one is perfectly entitled to absolutely everything that their ancestors had stolen from them, then we also have to accept that there are people today who benefit from the fact that their parents and grandparents profited from this immoral system. And the way to deal with that is with a social safety net that enables everyone to thrive. I'll leave you there.
Yes. Well, the core of the American system, this will actually answers your question directly, is that what do we do about the conquest ethic of the past? And here there are two options. There are two options. One option is we establish equal rights under the law. That was the solution of the civil rights movement, that we have had race-based discrimination, we've had racial hierarchy. Let's stop. Let's treat people according to the color of this, according to the content of their character. Equal rights under the law. Equal rights under the law. The other option, which you're defending, is you could essentially call it, let's correct for history. Let's correct for history. Let's try to find out who are the people in possession of stolen goods, and let's return it. Now, the first thing I'm trying to say is, this is a hugely controversial principle because it actually involves wrecking the freedom of a free society. You basically have to put it frankly, if we were to carry that out, go into people's homes and take their stuff. Take their furniture, take their cars. You don't seem to have even the guts to do that. You don't have the moral self-confidence to do it yourself. It may be, if I am advocating a rule of social justice and I'm advocating it for the whole society, before I persuade everybody else, let's say I'm a Christian and I believe everybody should give 10% of their wealth to help the poor. And I go, you know what? The Bible says this, the Bible says that, everybody should give 10% of their wealth to help the poor. And somebody says, Dinesh, are you giving 10% of your wealth? And I'm like, actually no, but I did do some tutoring. And you go, wait a minute, aren't you advocating, aren't you saying that there is a moral duty to do this? Why don't you do it? Before you convince us, you do it. And you're like, I don't think I should do it because society is extremely complex, and I don't think I should do it unless everybody else does it. No, either you believe in it and you do it. Once you've done it, you might...
Here's the thing, he doesn't believe in it. He doesn't believe in it. He does not believe what he just said. He doesn't believe in it. It sounds good to believe in. It's a good talking point, but he's never going to give up anything he has. Partially because deep down he believes he worked for it. That's one reason, which I don't know him, so I'm not going to... I agree, like, he seems pretty smart to me. If you got to the school, then you got to the school. And the second reason is that he doesn't even know if it's the right thing to do. He's virtue signaling. Like, he doesn't know. He just wants to sound good. He's never going to do it. He's never going to give up what he has. And if society doesn't change and nobody gives it up, he'll be completely fine with that because he doesn't really care. But my problem is when you have these type of discussions, there are actually people out here who I think do care about stuff like this, and there are actually people out here who think it's extremely wrong. And the problem is when you have these type of discussions, you're going down a path that you don't want to go down, bro. people shouldn't just give up their stuff just because. Like, it's not. This whole argument is very dangerous. That's all I'm trying to say. It's a very dangerous argument, bro.
Impress us, and then you might convince the rest of us that our wealth is also ill-gotten, but you can't do it. And I'm not trying to indict everybody of hypocrisy, only you, because you're the one who said, I'm the beneficiary of illicit privilege. So you're a really good starting point, because I'm asking, if you're in possession of stolen goods, why aren't you willing to return them? So that's why fundamentally I see your charity. You know, during the Civil War, there was a guy who goes, I'm very happy to give, I've given 3 cousins to the war and I'm ready to sacrifice my wife's brother. That's basically your ethics. You're willing to have social justice if other people pay, but you're not willing to pay. So that's the problem. And that's the problem with the progressivism that marches behind social justice while protecting its own privileges.
That's facts, bro. Like, and this video just pissed me off because, anyways, if y'all have any comments about this, let me know. Suggestions, let me know. Otherwise, you'll